Thunderbirds.
Our
Oh, we're
girl.
live.
We are live. We are live and back again with episode 14, I think. 14 of Unicorn Chef. And this week I am joined by the lovely Phil Cracknell. Hi, Phil.
Well, thank you. I'm a little disappointed it's taken 14 episodes to get me on the lineup, but I will forgive you for that as an old friend. Delighted to be here, even though it is all the way from Rhodes, where I arrived a few hours ago, and I've not slept since 10 o'clock last night.
You are well more committed to this podcasting cause than I am then, because next week when I'm on holiday, I'm not fucking joining.
I was going to stand in for you.
Thanks. Well, you could do.
Yeah, happy to do that.
So what are we cooking this week, Phil?
What are we cooking? Right. I have peppers. Feel a bit like Ainsley Harriott here, but without the ridiculous laughter.
Yes.
We've got peppers. I got this a couple of hours earlier because I had to get here and didn't know where I could get all my ingredients from. So this is steak, but they didn't have mince. So the guy got this big lump of steak and just threw it into a mincer. So it's pretty good quality steak. And all the rest of the ingredients I kind of blagged or borrowed a little bit from various different supermarkets. But we are making a fully cranked up pepper that's got, if you think about it in layers, it's got raw steak, which will be cooked. It's got rice, chili con carne or chili beans, some cheese, some onion. That makes the burger itself. So that will probably make 2 or 3 burgers.
Excellent.
They're flat cross sections of that. And then we obviously fry them up and we put them on a bed of whatever it might be. Could be these fantastic buns. It could be some amazing lettuce. You've ever had a burger made out of lettuce with a top and a bottom made out of lettuce? Wicked. So that's what we're making.
Excellent. I'm excited. I mean, you did only give me half the ingredients, so I only have half the ingredients in front of me. But as usual, we'll improvise.
Well, there's a reason for only giving you half the ingredients, because a little bird told me we were going to talk about incident response. Now, that's a subject really close to my heart, close to this rainbow badge with the unicorn on. So happy Pride Month, everybody. But here is my little badge. So close to my heart is incident response. And you never have all the ingredients for incident response. Oh, check how corny that one was, eh?
That was cheesier than this mozzarella that I've got right here.
You never have all the right parts. And sometimes you think you've got them and then the incident progresses and you're missing a piece. And so you have to improvise or you have to make an on-the-spot decision. Do you know what? We're going to remove chilies from this particular recipe then. Now, I'm not going to do that because chilies are my favourite. But that's the kind of thing. That's the reason I only gave you half the recipe.
Thanks. Well, luckily, I have a store cupboard full of stuff that I can use. So I have managed to quickly pull some extra shit together to make this into a meal that sounds good.
I've already seen your daughter raiding the supply cupboard.
Yes.
So I'd be surprised if it's actually all still there.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is a good point because she is a very hungry 7-year-old at all times.
Aren't they all?
She's just shouting from the living room. 7 3/4, actually. So
I also wanted to show off my trick for the perfect way to cut a pepper.
Okay.
And it actually leads right into the hands of this recipe, but it's also the best way to cut a pepper regardless of what you're making. I've got 2 dogs, and as we were saying earlier, the 5-second rule, when anything leaves this counter, the 5-second rule does not apply when you've got 2 2-second dogs that will have it before it even bounces. So they love bits of this pepper. So I've got a way of cutting it where there aren't bits flying everywhere. They're not waiting. They know I'm going to use every ounce of that pepper and that one and the other one.
Good. Well, I'm excited to see it because you are the closest I think we've had to a professionally trained chef. Given that you've
James
had,
Martin, find this apron.
I thought you might want to talk about James Martin, as you have mentioned him to me every day for like the past week.
I don't like to talk about it too much. He did say, however, that I was his advisor on all matters relating to cybersecurity. Well, his exact words were, if I want your opinion, I'll ask for it. But you get what I mean.
Yes. Yeah, I mean...
So I'm not stalker status. I've cooked with him twice now. He's a lovely bloke. He likes fast cars. What more can I say?
Well, there we go. Right up your street. So, shall we start a bit of the cooking off, and then we will talk more about incident response, because I've heard you have had an illustrious career in incident response, and I think it would be good to pick your brains on it.
Okay, happy to do that. I'm going to start with the peppers first.
Okay.
So we're going. Can you see this? Okay.
I can see it perfectly. Yeah.
We're going to aim down there. Now, this is the trick that a lot of people miss. We're not trying to pull all the bits out of it and all the seeds and everything. We're aiming straight down at the base of the stalk.
Okay.
So if we go like that, what's fallen out is effectively the stalk of the pepper, but you've got all these bits that you normally throw away. Suddenly available. So it's a very sustainable and economic way of skinning a pepper. Then we chop off the bottom. Again, another bit that's often thrown away. And that's what we've got left. What we're then going to do is put a big long knife through this. Basically, put the 4 areas where the seeds touch the pepper. And what happens then is the middle falls out. And that's my waste. That's all we've got is waste.
Phil,
The whole
I thought this was revolutionary, but that's exactly how my mum taught me how to cut peppers up. So
well, that just shows what a great person your mum is then.
Well, it does. I mean, she was on last week and she did. It was the best meal that we've had. Not that
I know. I was nervous today to try and fill those shoes. Anyway, so now we've got this. What we're going to do is the same with another pepper.
Well, I'm
Again,
wood,
it's
so
no glue.
Yes.
Look, out comes the middle. There's a reusable bit. That can even be the lid to put on a pepper if you're doing stuffed peppers. You've got the little hole for whatever you need. So, and then same with the bottom. Take the bottom off it. We've got that bit, and then we just simply get rid of the seeds in one go. So, and you've got a nice empty pepper. So easy to do, and I've been doing it the wrong way for so many years. I'll leave the yellow one to one side. This is what you should be left with.
Yes.
You then get this ridiculously overpriced Greek steak, but you've got to support your local communities. I mean, so when you go anywhere like that,
mine's not overpriced. It was from Aldi earlier, so I'm doing all right with mine. But yes, yours will probably taste nicer.
Go to your butcher. Your butcher needs help. They've been put under so much pressure. You can go to your butcher and buy this instead of buying it from a supermarket chain. I'm not trying to be any kind of revolutionary here, but whatever it is you're going to buy it from a sustainable source. Yeah. Buy it straight from the farm if you can. And all I'm doing is, as you can see, stuffing my peppers.
Nice. Done that.
So tell me when you're there.
Yep, I've got a stuffed pepper.
Excellent.
Easy peasy.
So now
So good.
So the problem is when you're cooking anything like this, the meat, if we start to cook that, the meat will shrink naturally,
Yes.
and there'll be a big gap between the pepper and the meat. And what's better to fill a big gap than a pile of chili beans?
Nice.
Well, there is one thing that's better. That's some arborio rice that's cooked with a tomato pesto. This was one of the secret ingredients. You now know.
Just,
And a
yeah,
bit of cheddar cheese. I managed to get cheddar cheese
in Greece.
here.
Wow,
I know.
that's impressive.
And then some onions, just as you'd like them in terms of if you had onions on a fried burger or anything like that
Yeah.
at the fairground. So that's what we're aiming for. We've got our two things. We press them down. Next, we're going to slice. And I would say the red pepper is going to make 2 burgers. The green one is probably going to make 3 smaller ones. So all you have to do is with the right knife. And again, I came all this way. This sounds really chefy. Wherever I go, I carry my knife sharpeners because you can't really rock up to a foreign country with a set of knives in a case. Well, you
No.
can, but they tend to lock you away for a bit. So what I do is I take the sharpener. So then I transform whatever knife collection this place has into an absolute armory of sharpened weapons. And so I've freshly done this one. If you just cut through it, you see you've got a burger in the middle of the pepper. Okay, so we've got those two. Stick them to one side. We'll probably get 3 out of this one. And this is good. Obviously, plant-based materials are available and just as good, some would say.
I think most people wouldn't say that, but we'll be inclusive, I guess.
You might be able to edit that bit out, but I am a vegetarian. I only eat vegetables that swim, run, and fly.
Well, your dad jokes are getting increasingly worse, just so you
know. I know, aren't they just? So now I would transfer these into a pan and start that process. Right, here we go. Hopefully you can still see me and hear me. We've got a little bit of oil in the bottom. I've used olive oil because I have nothing else. But vegetable oil is probably just as good.
Yeah.
So we've got our burgers in frying.
Excellent. I'm going
to
let the pan warm up slightly.
How you doing? What's the temperature of your pan?
Well, I don't know because I don't have a thermometer, so I'm just going to let the pan warm up for a little bit, so we can talk about instant response while we're waiting for my exceedingly slow cooker to warm up.
We can. Well, yes. I'm almost slightly emotional about incident response.
I've noticed
that the workshop that I developed is now 11 years old.
Wow.
So in 2014, I developed a workshop that helps people recover or at least manage when they do have some kind of a cyber breach. And that's been delivered to hundreds of organisations, hundreds of people. The Welsh Government have taken it on contract for the last 3 years. And all it does is give them a capability. It doesn't give them a playbook. Everyone talks, when they talk about incident response, they talk about this playbook, this magical, almost mythical creature that contains all the answers to everything you need. But it doesn't. It contains no answers. All it's full of is questions. And those questions, when you get the answers from the right people, form the magic in that document. So you don't want to know if you can unplug from the internet. For example, in the middle of a crisis, can we unplug from the internet? let's get hold of the CTO, let's get hold of the CIO or the CEO. Let's find out if we're allowed to do that. And my perspective would be, you should already know that.
Yes.
You should have made that decision. It should have been approved by the CEO, and it should be recorded in your playbook. So the playbook is not this mythical creature. This playbook is a collection of all your decisions that you've made. And it means you've thought about that situation. You've thought about what might be needed, and you've also thought about what the impact of it would be. And you've asked that question of the higher ups. They've given you an answer, and you've scribbled it in the playbook. That is golden now. You've got a set of decisions you can carry out at 2 a.m. when there's no one around. You can't get hold of the senior leadership.
So but the playbook, it's not going to have every possible scenario in there, is it? Or is it supposed to? Like, what if there's something brand new that you've not thought of? How do you account for that?
Just like our recipe, just like this recipe, it will have some of the essentials in there, but there'll always be that thing that you've not thought of. I'm just checking.
Yeah, my pepper's on the pan now, I think.
So there's always going to be that thing you've not thought of. And that is because the playbook is a fluid piece of work. It's not a document you create overnight or you create from a workshop or a round table. It lives, it breathes, it gets tested, it gets course corrected, and it continues on. So I would suggest anyone that's just created a playbook, until they've put it through some kind of a tabletop test, that playbook is in its infancy. It's valuable, and I'm not suggesting anything derogatory towards anybody that's created a playbook and is sitting pretty, but I would come into an organization like that, blow the dust off the playbook and say, let's test this now, because without testing, we don't know whether it's any good, and we don't know whether the ingredients are right.
Do you find a lot of organizations don't test it?
A lot. They create it so they can say they've got it, so they can tick a box. Now, sadly, that box, can be something like the Prudential Regulatory Authority, who have a checklist for all parties that fall under their control, which is insurance, finance, banking, the law.
Yeah.
And there is a checklist that says, do you have a playbook and have you tested it? And that's it. They're two very distinct questions in that playbook. So you see, when you ask a question to try and gain whether someone has compliance with that question, you're instantly setting them up to say, well, we've got one. Look, it's here. They may not have got one. They may have felt unnecessarily pressured to say they have got one to tick a box. Whereas it would be better to say, no, we haven't. We're going to have a workshop. We're going to sit down then for the next 3 months and iron out every scenario that thing might need. And then we're going to record all that. And then we're going to say we've got a playbook, but not until. And I think that, sadly, is the mindset and the mentality, which is it's a box ticking exercise.
Yes. Yeah. And I think if even people who do test their playbook, from conversations that I've had or stories that I've heard, a lot of people are just testing it internally. And I question not necessarily the validity, but I question the rigorousness. Is that the right word? Rigorousness of that exercise. Yeah. Because if you're the internal person,
rigorosity.
Yeah, that whatever it is. But if you're if you're testing it internally, you can't. I know that there's a propensity there to just go, yeah, we'll work that bit out later, or this guy knows that answer, and you're not actually. There's less accountability in the room because it's just the internal team doing it. And I always think that it's got to be much better for the company as well to do an external kind of assessment on that.
You just hit the nail on the head there. You just found that missing ingredient when you said accountability. Because the first thing that we do when we run any kind of exercise is not to get an organization to have a playbook in Word format at the end of the day. Yes, we
Yeah.
can do that, but that's useless to them. We don't want to do that. We want to give them the capability, not just the document that does it.
Yeah.
So we start with a RACI matrix. And obviously the A in RACI is all about accountability. We list a whole bunch of things that you need to do in the event of a crisis or an emergency or an incident. And then we get the people together and we get them to agree who's responsible to actually check this thing, who's responsible to disconnect from the internet, who's accountable if we don't isolate our systems. And by asking those really awkward questions and putting a number on it, or in our case, we're putting a letter on it, an R, an A C, or an I, you're either consulted, we ask you before we do it, you're informed, we tell you after we've done it, you're responsible, you have to do it, and you're accountable. You are the one throat to choke if it's not done. You are the person we're going to come after. In those terms, you sit down with all the relevant people and work out who does what, and there is no ambiguity going forward. It is the simplest 2 hours an organisation can ever have, but it steps them on that road.
I think that's the key thing that you said there, though. Sit down with the relevant people. So I've talked to organisations before about incident response, because obviously we work with you guys and we promote some of your services and within our client base as well. But when I've spoken to some clients about incident response, their incident response team is made up of the IT/cyber team. And that's not what the incident response team needs to be, is it? Because it's obviously a much wider ranging problem, or a wider ranging set of people that you need to get involved in resolving an incident.
Flip your peppers, by the way, at this stage.
Okay.
But no, you're absolutely on the money there in terms of who's involved, who's sat around that table. Everybody, when we start a workshop, and like I said, we've been doing them since 2014, we've done hundreds of them. We've refined the way we approach it, and we start off by looking around the table and asking each of the people what they think their role is in an incident response scenario. And the poor IT people are basically like, well, we have to do it all. Yeah. And what do the rest do? Well, they kind of point at us and go, is it fixed yet? Yeah, because it's always an IT problem. And we know it's not an IT problem.
I think in those situations, like when I've spoken to people about it, just anecdotally, obviously not in a workshop, but when I've spoken to people quite anecdotally, I've pointed out so you've got ransomware. So the situation is there's ransomware and the attackers are demanding a ransom. Who in the IT team has the ability to make the commercial decision about whether to pay the ransom or not? Presumably, no. Exactly. No. So at that point, that's kind of how I have explained to people that the incident response needs to go outside of the IT team, because there's decisions that are being made. So if you're saying it's the IT team's problem to deal with, cool, give them the budget then. Give them the budget, because if they need to make that decision and just keep the IT team informed and let them run the business, because that's what you're basically saying.
And let's face it, this is a really controversial viewpoint, but I'm pretty sure you share it with me. Paying the ransom quite often can be a business impact decision. How long is it going to take me to recover? 6 months. What effect will that have? Massive effect. How much will it cost me? Millions. Or could I pay the ransom and be back online tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yes, that'll cost you 2 million if you negotiate it. Now, I'm not condoning that. I have been involved in ransomware and ransom discussions with the parties. And it is always something that we want to avoid, because ultimately we are fueling these attacks and could be fueling terrorism. We don't know what's behind paying ransoms. So we have to take that hardline approach. But a business will say, if I pay this money, I can be back up and running. Okay, well, tell me why I shouldn't pay the ransom. And so the office of Financial Sanctions Implementation, it's a catchy title, OFSI, is going to be fining UK businesses if they pay the ransom.
But
That is starting to
could,
happen now.
yeah, but that could still end up cheaper depending on how severe the ransomware attack is.
Absolutely, yeah. That's the ridiculousness of this situation that we're in. And, you know, we have to start looking at resilience as being the thing, not so much security and barrier protection and so on. As you know, I'm involved in defense certification for IASME.
Yeah.
And one of the things that the mod are really enforcing now with all their organizations and their contractors is, can you get up after a punch? Are you resilient? We don't care that you got knocked down. Well, we do, but we don't want to see you get knocked down. But that's not the end of it. Can you get up after you've been knocked down?
Yeah,
And that, I think, it holds the answer to the wider picture, which is if we had resilience, we might not be as susceptible to these requests and demands. And coming back to the original point, which was about that cert, I've had chief finance officers, legal counsels, chief executives, shareholders, trustees, audit committee members. Oh, and the head of IT as well. She came along, but almost an afterthought. When that's happening, when those people, the IT team, are invited along afterwards, you get into the right place because you've got the chief finance officer, the chief exec, all the senior leaders there around that table to make the decisions. Because they all think it's IT's problem. And the more we can push it's not IT's problem, the better.
I think another overlooked role is whoever's in charge of your PR as well. Because if you're a big enough organization, or if you're a public sector organization, then you need to have a PR strategy that goes along with your incident response, because even if you're not that big a company, but you've got to have a public response to your customer base or your suppliers or your shareholders, that you can say, this is what I'm doing, this is how we're dealing with the incident, this is what we know, whatever. But you've got to have that public facing conversation as well. And I think the PR team's always massively overlooked.
The comms message, you're absolutely spot on there, Amy. The comms messaging, if we look back to, and I think the injunction will allow me to mention them, Talk. My favourite case in point, because they, in 2015, 2016, handled the situation of comms so badly, they set a new high bar. We'd got organisations like Tesco Bank that were being hacked at the same time. No one can remember that because they handled it beautifully. Dido Harding and Talk, that's another story. That was handled so badly. That was obfuscation. That was everything you could think of. Dido Harding said on national news, our organisation was attacked by a nation state.
Yes.
Right. And it was a highly sophisticated vulnerability that was exploited. It wasn't a nation state, it was a young lad from Southern Ireland in his bedroom. It wasn't a highly sophisticated vulnerability. It was the third cyber breach in the last 12 months that Talk had. So they just totally mismanaged it by thinking they could point to the sky and go, oh, look, helicopters, to try and distract people, when in fact they weren't doing the right thing. They thought comms could fix it, and it absolutely could not. It is a real good example, if that makes sense.
Yes. Or a good bad example.
Probably that.
Yes. But yeah, no, I think that's the bit that gets overlooked a lot, because people then, if you've not planned for that bit, which in some way could be the bit that saves your reputation in the market. So because when there's an incident, obviously, there's there's different factors that you need to think about. So it's from a financial perspective, an operational perspective, like how quick can we get back online? How quick can we get back to BAU? But then there's the resources that you've got as a team. How are we using those resources effectively? Are people going to burn out? Because it's really time intensive and mentally draining dealing with that kind of thing. Then you've also got your reputation to either your customers or your suppliers or your reputation in the market. And I think the comms piece is the bit that can save that, can make or break that reputation, depending on how you dealt with that part of the incident.
Absolutely. And let's not forget, who wants to work for an organisation? Nobody wants to work for an organisation that gets attacked, but we don't have that privilege. But to work for an organisation that handles it well and makes you feel good about things. And that's what we owe really to not only our shareholders, stakeholders in that organisation and the sustainability of that, the supply chain. Supply chain is massively underrated in all of this. But we've got the employees, the mental health of people that have been involved in an attack is something to look at. It really is. You take something like Copeland Borough Council, which is a public case study that Copeland put together. There were cases of individuals who worked in the IT team 18 months later, still being abused by members of the public because the system was compromised. It's shocking. And that particular borough council, it's a real, I would advise anyone in this field to go and read that case study because it's heartbreaking at times.
Yeah, I think that bit gets overlooked by employers, especially when people are saying it is the IT team that need to deal with it. But I know a lot of IT teams and a lot of security teams are woefully understaffed. There's apparent skills gap. We don't have a skills gap. We just have unicorn job titles. That's a whole other fucking podcast. But there's gaps in the security teams. I know some big, huge companies like FTSE 250 companies that have got like 4 people in their security team, which is it's ridiculous. So if they had an incident, then what are you going? Then how are you going to do? Like, how are you actually physically going to deal with that? You're not, are you? So you're going to be so stressed.
And what's going to happen to BAU? Everyone forgets BAU. They say all hands to the pump. IT, go and fix the ransomware problem. Go and restore all the gold images. Bring everything back to normal. What about normal activity as well? That just has to cease for an amount of time while the poor IT team who are responsible for that now have a new job for the next 72 hours without break, respite or sleep, which is to get things back to normal. And so organizations need to seriously think along the lines, cyber insurance, one of the good things that cyber insurance will bring, and remember, it's not the panacea. It won't pay fines. They're meant to be punitive. It won't cover direct financial losses. Cyber insurance, please understand what it covers. But also appreciate that in most cases, it will include a retained team of experts to help you. So the second you make your claim, you've got experts on site helping, and that alleviates poor IT having to do their normal job and fix up the problems.
So I'm going to throw a spanner in the works there, though, because that would rely on people knowing they've got an incident going on in the first place, which sometimes goes undetected, and B, the worst bit, them then admitting that they've got an incident going on, because as soon as you report it to your insurance, you've then admitted you've got something going on, which means you've then got to deal with it. But a lot of companies don't want to admit they've got an incident going on, do they? They like to just fly.
I'm glad you threw that banner in, and I've got a great answer for you there. That's food for thought for all the viewers. Where are we at with the food, first of all?
Oh yeah, I've fried my peppers already. Yeah, I'm good.
So mine are fried and ready. What I then do is put some arborio rice on top to fill the gaps. Because have you got some gaps in yours, Amy?
I do have gaps in mine.
Yeah, so we're looking to fill those gaps with this carefully planned arborio rice.
Lovely. That I did not plan for arborio rice. I've got beans now, and I've got cheese.
Yeah, I know, because I only gave you half the story,
Yeah.
and that was intentional. And I'm bad, and I will go straight to hell for that. And then
a bit extreme.
Then we're going to stick the chili on top. Just a little blob of chili beans.
Nice.
Now the pepper is looking fairly well stacked.
Yes.
And here we go. There we go. In terms of notifying the public, this is the elephant in the room. When does an organisation tell the public? We've got this notional 72 hours with the ICO, but that's to tell the ICO what the nature and scope of the incident is. That's not necessarily to tell the affected customers or the public.
No.
But what is coming in what I think, and this is a personal view from a few opinions and a few discussions I've had, but NIS 2, okay, so we talk about NIS as being the custodian, if you like, in terms of CAF, the Cyber Assessment Framework, and critical national infrastructure. So there we've got NIS, the NIS regulations, derived from the NIS directive. NIS 2 has appeared, but that still only applies in the EU. Doesn't apply in the UK yet. But NIS 2 contains some real valuable and important elements like incident reporting. You will report incidents within 24 hours. And rumour has it that instead of the UK creating an equivalent of NIS 2, they will make the Cyber Security and Resilience Bill that thing that represents NIS 2 in the UK, which will mean in the UK. Sorry?
It's coming out. It's January. We're expecting that, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes. So when that happens, we'll be talking about organisations that are part of CNI, which remember NIS 2 is wider and deeper than it used to be. So now suppliers to people who were operators of essential services are now included in NIS, or NIS 2 as it'll be. But the most relevant thing that I wanted to kind of tie up to there was the fact that it's 24 hours, or it's suggested in the Cyber Security and Resilience Bill, 24 hours will be the time at which certain incidents are made public. So there's legislation, as always. If we don't regulate ourselves, we will be regulated. Yeah. And again, we've dropped the ball by failing in a way to set some kind of a reasonable standard to tell the world we've been hacked. Because we can't do that, some legislation or regulation will do it for us. And sadly, that's the case. But that will be the outcome.
Yeah. Well, that'll be interesting. Yeah. That will be interesting to see how, who actually ends up adhering to it, how they're gonna police that, I guess.
It will.
And yeah, what the consequences are of, I guess, not complying with that. Because I imagine a lot of people will not be happy about that.
There'll be hefty consequences. I'm pretty sure of that. What I'm doing now, very briefly, do that. James Martin told me not to do that. Anyway, did I mention James? Oh, I think I did, yeah. And so I now have a lettuce burger, which is made up of all the layers.
Yeah.
We've got cheese to put on top and melt, but I've also got the bread burger, exactly the same mechanism. And because we've stuffed these things full of rice, and then we put chili on top, and then we add all the other toppings, this thing becomes a real solid bite.
Nice. I'm excited. I'm just letting my cheese melt now, and then because I'm not eating bread, so I'm just going to eat a burger. I'm excited for it. Then.
Finger beauty. This is called the Incident Response Burger.
I've
It's
enjoyed
full of
it.
everything and it will help you out of a hole.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure your wife and daughter want to eat an incident response burger right now because
They've got their noses pressed up against the door right now.
yes, and my 7-year-old keeps wanting to come in here as well. So now that our dinner is ready, I'm going to wrap up the podcast. But I think, Phil, that was a super interesting conversation. And thank you so much for joining us. If people want to get in touch with you, how do they find you?
Well, they can get hold of me on LinkedIn. They can get me through IP Performance or through my other day job, which is IASME.
Or your other day job, which is being on my board.
Well, of course. I mean, I thought that was a given, so I didn't really want to add that. Yeah,
Cool.
very excited about the escape room.
Yes.
It's just going from strength to strength. Every post I see is like, wow, here we go again, another round.
Yes.
So
Yes.
just keep going, just keep going, just keep doing it.
That's why
You're smashing it.
I'm excited to be in a foreign country as well this week, which so I'm not too far behind you on holidays.
Is the lovely Dane with you?
He will be, yes.
Say hello to, give him a hug from me.
I will.
But no,
Okay.
really enjoyed tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil, and I'm excited to go and eat my dinner. So have a good evening, everyone. We are back later this evening where Bryson is interviewing the lovely Jane Beerley. I can't remember what they're cooking. I think it's chicken. But yeah, you can tune in at 6 p.m. Eastern time for that one. So thanks, guys, and we'll see you soon.